There we go. We're official now.
Okay. On page 12, we're looking at the building of Solomon's temple, and we'll be spending probably the majority of the time taking just kind of a look at what that involved and how that was built. And one of the things that as I read through it, and I'm sure that by the time we get done reading, we have a lot of reading to do. You might wonder, why is this all in the Bible? I mean, what good is it to know how the temple was built, those types of things?
That's a good.
And yet, you know, when I ask the question, the response is there's not a one single word or a single verse in the Bible that is not of value. And God put it there for a reason. So from that standpoint, we take a look at that as well and see what we can see from these words here that happened hundreds of years, thousands of years ago. And yet it's recorded and made available to us and will be there in history forever. So going now to our first reading of 1 Kings chapter 5, verse 3. Here we have the words, listen to this. I intend to build a house for the name of the Lord my God, just as the Lord told my father. Your son, whom I will put on your throne in your place, will build a house for my name. So Solomon is speaking, of course, of his father David, and gives us a historical and very simple answer to
That was
being built.
that was chapter 5, verse 3.
First Kings.
First King.
That was actually verse 5.
Was it?
Yeah.
Because I was reading it. And I couldn't make it work. I intend therefore to build a temple. Yeah, okay, that's verse 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So not verse 3.
And now we want to take a look at First Chronicles. That's before Kings. First Chronicles chapter 22.
Before through history.
Think of it, isn't it?
It's after.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Oops.
First Chronicles chapter 22.
Oh, I found First Chronicles 20. Too close. Just a minute. (22)
Yes.
Verse what?
Starting at verse 6.
22 verse 6. Okay.
Okay. Here we read, David said to Solomon, my son, I had it in my heart to build a house for the name of the Lord my God. But this word of the Lord was laid upon me. You have shed much blood. You have waged great wars. You will not build a house for my name because of the great amount of blood you have shed on the earth in my presence.
Oh.
You see, a son has been born to you. He will be a man of peace. To him I will give peace from all the enemies around the world around him. Solomon will be his name. I will bestow peace and quiet upon Israel in his days. He will build a house for my name. He will be my son. I will be his father. I will establish the throne of his kingdom in Israel forever. Now, my son, the Lord will be with you. You will succeed. You will build the house for the Lord your God, as he has said about you. The Lord will give you discretion and understanding. He will give you orders about Israel and about how to keep the law of the Lord your God. What are some things that strike you about this particular writing here?
Oh,
So whose plan is this really?
it's God's plan, Lord.
It's God's plan. Who makes the plan in your life?
Oh, even though we don't, sometimes I do.
We haven't got enough time to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. You wonder sometimes if that comes out in the end.
Who makes the plans in your life and my life? Yeah. So God has made the plans, but he uses people. He uses his people. What was the distinction between David and Solomon in terms of their lifestyle?
One was a peaceful man. The one with Solomon was peaceful.
Solomon was peaceful and
David was a playboy. Was a warrior. What she said, playboy. David.
David was at war all the time.
Yeah, well,
David was at war. They both were very, very successful. They both were followers of God. They both failed miserably in their lives at times and were very productive. Why do you think God picked Solomon instead of David?
Probably had
Other
more
than the fact of
wisdom.
the peace war
He had more wisdom and was more level headed.
or wisdom.
probably be easier to get materials and that too in a peaceful time and. Well, he was younger.
Good
He was
observation.
younger, more able to take on the task.
David committed adultery. He also committed murder. His life wasn't exemplary in the beginning, although Psalm 51, he did confess to the Lord. Was sorry.
Yes, but when the Lord forgives, he forgets. Well, that shouldn't have.
Well, look at Old Testament scripture. He doesn't exactly.
Repercussions, but because of it, you know.
Consequences.
Consequences there.
Oh, thank
He
you,
does forget,
thank you.
but there are consequences.
Oh, okay, thank you, thank you, I'm using that.
He does not hold our sins against him,
Good.
but that doesn't mean there's not consequences.
There's one basic significance that we can pick from all this stuff. Most of us would, take a look at the ideas of that thing. What do you think? What do you know about your God in terms of peace and war?
Well, doesn't he allow war? He allows war for some things. God does. And probably Solomon would never do that.
What does Jesus bring to us in your salvation? What is the main ingredient that Christ brings to us and gives to us?
Salvation.
Our salvation. Forgiveness,
Okay, and salvation.
Quietness.
love, yeah,
What was that?
love.
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 But he gives us choices.
Well, what about peace?
Peace, yes.
The peace of the Lord be with you always.
Oh, gosh.
Okay. It kind of, we hear it, but it kind of zooms by us without realizing. And that peace means forgiveness. It's a peace that you don't have to battle with Satan coming at you all the time. It's a peace that says, I forgot. God says, I forgot. You're forgiven. He's the God of peace. This world is a God of war. It's always battle after battle. And so, very working into all of this is this picking of David and Solomon. One a man of peace, one a man of war. Both very capable, both very profound in their work. But when it comes down to the final part, it's a matter of peace. And that's the peace that you and I can give to others, especially if they sin against us, to give them peace. We should be a people of peace, not war. We're not a people to get even, to strike back. I'm not saying we don't do it. I'm not saying I didn't do it. But that's what God brings to us, and we need to pass on to one another. A people of peace from that standpoint. And in particular, we see God desired a man of peace to build the house of the Lord.
Yes.
This is where God's going to reside. So he wasn't going to be named under a name of the house of war, but a house of peace. This is God's house. The sanctuary is a house of peace. A house of peace. God's residence. So I think this is a simple but yet a profound aspect of understanding our God and understanding how he works in life. It does bring the stress upon us. It does put us in positions of war. All we risk it. Okay, page 13.
But at the end, things weren't so merry with Solomon either.
Too
He
much.
taxed the people horribly.
No question about it. No question of the same. Solomon failed. Solomon failed. No matter who probably God was the nature. That's that.
It's a comfort for us. God works through faulty, failing people.
Okay, we want to take a look at our reading here in 1 Kings chapter 5. We're going to go through 5, 6 in this reading here. So it's kind of lengthy. Hope it is not tiring. We can find out now in terms of the building of the temple, what went on there from that standpoint. So follow along, and we'll probably stop along the way and I'll offer time for some questions or comments. Chapter 5, beginning at verse 1, Hiram, king of Tyre, sent his servants to Solomon because he heard that Solomon had been appointed king in his father's place, and because Hiram had been a dear friend of David all his days. Solomon sent the following message to Hiram. You know that my father David was not able to build a house for the name of the Lord, his God, because of the wars that swirled around him until the Lord put his enemies under the soles of his feet. But now the Lord my God has given me rest on every side. I have no adversary and face no dangerous situations. In other words, the wars have been pretty much solved for the time being. And even here, you can see that, David was was forced into these wars to battle against these others. God knew that, and God knew David was the one to lead Israelites through that. So it wasn't a matter that David didn't really do what God wanted him to do. He did, but again, when we think of, we have a God of peace, and building the sanctuary, building the temple was to be a building of peace. This is where God wanted the final emphasis for. Verse 4, but now the Lord my God has given me rest on every side. I have no adversary and face no dangerous situations. Listen to this. I intend to build a house for the name of the Lord my God, just as the Lord told my father, your son whom I will put on your throne in your place will build a house for my name. Now give the order to cut cedar logs for me from Lebanon. My servants will work with your servants, and I will reimburse you whatever you specify as the pay for your service. For you know that there is no one among us who knows how to cut lumber like the Sidonians. When Hiram heard Solomon's words, he was very happy, and he said, blessed be the Lord this day, because he has given David a wise son to rule over this great people. So Hiram sent word to Solomon, I have heard the message you sent me. I will provide all the cedar and fir logs that you desire. My servants will bring the logs down from Lebanon to the sea. I will put them into the sea as rafts and float them to the place that you tell me. Then we will dismantle them there, and you can transport them out from there. In exchange, you'll provide all the food I desire for my palace. So here we have a working arrangement, right? Not really simple in those days by any means. It sounds simple by words, but it's an arrangement of how to move these huge logs miles away and bring them down and get them in place to be used for this house. So Hiram gave Solomon all the cedar and fir that he desired. In return, Solomon gave Hiram 120,000 bushels of wheat as provisions for his palace. Now, some of you might have the word cubic in there, and I think that actually is representative of bushel. So Solomon gave Hiram 120,000 bushels of wheat as provisions for his palace and 120,000 gallons of beaten olive oil. Solomon gave this amount to Hiram every year. The Lord gave wisdom to Solomon, just as he had promised him. So there was peace between Hiram and Solomon, and they made a treaty. King Solomon drafted a labor force from all over Israel. It numbered 30,000 men. You get a little idea of the perspective of this project. What this is looking at. We don't have telephones. We don't have online communication, those types of things.
Yeah, it's massive.
It's massive. Yeah, it's massive. It's all human labor. Verse 14. He sent 10,000 men per month to Lebanon in ships. They would spend 1 month in Lebanon. Then for 2 months they would be at home. Adoniram was in charge of this forced labor. Solomon had 70,000 men to transport materials, 80,000 men to core stones in the mountains.
Wow.
This was not a small project.
Like 80,000 stone cutters?
Yes. Yes.
I-
That was one of the major businesses, because that's what they built their buildings on.
Yeah.
I mean, most of all the buildings were of stone.
Whoa.
So that was a big manufacturing type of thing, and it was not machinery run. It was with a sledgehammer and a pick.
Yeah. I mean, just primitive,
Yes.
really. I get that, it's mind boggling.
Okay. Solomon, verse 15, again, Solomon had 70,000 men to transport materials, 80,000 men to pour stones in the mountains, not counting the officials who were overseeing the work for Solomon. There were 3,300 men supervising the people who were doing the work. 3,300 men supervised.
3,000.
Who's in charge of what?
Whoa.
Okay.
Well, they didn't probably, well, of course, they had paper and a way of writing it down. But
Verse 17, the king gave a command and they forged large, high quality stones to serve as a foundation for the temple building, which was made of trimmed stones. Solomon's builders and Hiram's builders and the men from Gabal cut and prepared the wood and stones to construct the temple building. Chapter 6. In the 480th year after the people of Israel came out of the land of Egypt, during the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month named Ziv, which is the 2nd month, Solomon began to build a house for the Lord. The house which King Solomon built for the Lord was 90 feet long, 30 feet wide, 45 foot high. It's a big building, but not
No,
it's not that big a building. There's many houses that are that big. Okay, so as we take a look at it, 90 feet high, long, 30
That's
feet wide.
90 feet,
That's
would be about 9
small
stories.
mansion of
9 stories. 9 stories high,
stories high.
but now 20 feet wide. Well, and then it says 30 feet high. I guess it's
90 feet long, 30 feet high, wide.
Now, what's the comparison between a cubit and a foot? Ours is, in this translation, is a cubit,
Just put down 90 feet high, 30 feet wide. That's what I did in my Bible.
Okay, but I mean, I
Because
just
we
wanted
can't think
to
of
the
cubits.
comparison one.
and I had to compare everything by 10 feet, my children's bedrooms were 10 by 10, which was 100 square feet. So when I have to think of feet, I try to think, okay, that's 10 feet, but
The cubit was, the average distance between your elbow and the longest finger.
About 18 inches.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think that's the metric they use to convert it.
wow.
I thought I used to remember, but I couldn't think of that.
Wow. I'm still stuck on that 30,000, 80,000.
Building on.
No,
Building.
A lot of feet.
Yeah, but they had to cut all that stone out of the side of a mountain, probably.
Yeah.
So that's where the labor, the bulk had to be, because you had to have the building material before you could build the building. Oh, wow.
You move those big things.
Well, I think of it, my husband's an iron worker. So I've seen him high up on the iron. He was 96 floors high in Chicago in the middle of the winter before he went to Disney World. And I'm thinking he's up there and the hawk is out and there's no walls, there's beams. That was before we married and so yeah, and I'm thinking, what kind of guy does that? Well,
Me.
my guy, poor, but you think he's up there with materials. These guys are
yeah, just
Yeah.
using
uh,
hard thing to get that stone out of there. I mean, it's terrible work.
well, it had to be.
And then they were probably measured stones, so one would fit on top of the other.
Yeah,
That's
they had to
standpoint,
be.
so. you know. Yeah.
They were
must have
amazing.
some type of blueprint.
Oh,
And the
I'm sure they
blueprint
had
back in
blueprint.
there, but they had to have some kind
Oh,
of
but yeah, I'm
design.
sure they had a blueprint. You know, one of them scrolls and you rolled it out, you know? I mean, I saw that on Moses. You know, for Charlton Heston. That's when they built all those pyramids, they had those. So I know, yeah, well, yeah. He wouldn't allow it. But I mean, you're thinking of the scope of that,
Verse 3.
just
Wow.
really, phew, just,
Verse 3. The porch in front of the temple building was 30 feet wide, same as the width of the building. It extended out 15 feet from the front of the building. He made lattice windows high on the walls of the building. He added a structure along the outer walls of the building, all the way around the three sides of the building. It was built against the walls of both the front room and the inner room of the sanctuary. In this structure, he constructed 3 levels of storage rooms, all the way around the building. The width of the rooms on the lowest story was 7.5 feet. The rooms of the middle story was 9 feet wide, and the rooms of the third story was 10.5 feet wide, because he had built 3 receding ledges into the outside wall of the building temple all the way around, so that the floor beams of each story would not have to be inserted into the walls of the main building. So they had a scientific way to do that in terms
Boy,
of
they
their
did.
way of doing things. They knew how to build. Verse 8, the entrance into the lowest story of the side rooms was on the south side of the building. Winding stairs went up to the middle floor and also from the middle floor to the third floor. The Solomon finished building the house, and he covered the house with beams and planks of cedar.
okay, that's
He, he built the floors for the storerooms that were all around the house. Each story was 7.5 feet high. Each story was supported by cedar beams, which rested on the receding ledges constructed along the walls of the building.
Does anyone want a picture of Solomon's temple? I'll run it off for next week.
Yeah.
wow. You know, I was thinking as you're reading this, and it's so precise in the measurements and everything. I don't know if any of you went to see the Ark down in Kentucky.
Yep.
Wow. That really, I mean, when you're standing there looking at it, you're thinking, okay, I guess you could get everything in there, you know? But we need to contact them down there and tell them, why don't they build one of this temple? Because it's really precise. Wow.
Pastor's looking up some pictures here that can give you a little bit of an idea.
Oh. That's cool, thanks. Yeah. But I mean, you look at that building and you think 80,000 men, and then that's just doing one job. Then all the other men that were doing the other jobs.
No
I
machines.
don't think
in
there was
those
any
days.
women involved.
Well, I'm probably covered that.
Probably. Wow, that's just amazing.
Yes, it is.
And in those days, Lebanon and Israel got along. Now Lebanon's shooting bombs into Israel.
Oh, gosh, it's just sad. Sad, the whole thing.
You know,
The census.
something that I guess occurs to me on all of this is how many people would there have been around really that would have want to build something like this? I mean, how many would want to take on a job like this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And yet you have a willing servant of the Lord saying, I'm going to do this. I mean, if I was in charge, I'd say, I'll wait till the next guy. My approach, sorry, Lord, but
Yeah.
to the next guy that comes, let him take care of that. I got enough problems of my own. But that's, yeah, that's another aspect of understanding. How many would really take on the job like that? Knowing what it was all was. But Solomon, in his wisdom, that was a gift from God, used it and put that together. And again, we see how God has worked together.
Is that it, finish?
Good job.
Yeah, no, it doesn't want to show it to me, but I have saved somewhere. Pictures.
Where were we at now? 12?
Yes. Verse 11.
Let's see that.
Now the word of the Lord came to Solomon. He said, in regard to this house which you are building, if you walk according to my statutes and carry out my ordinances and keep all my commands by walking according to them, you will be the one through whom I will fulfill my promise which I spoke to your father David. I will dwell among the descendants of Israel, and I will not forsake my people Israel. So again, I means only that God can understand and use. He spoke to Solomon in these words, asking that Solomon and the people would follow his statutes, carry out his ordinances, keep all his commands.
And he would not abandon.
Just do what I have laid out to do for you. This is what he has put down.
Sorry. I do have pictures saved in here from, I did a Bible study. Way back in the Dead Dark days of vicarage. It's there somewhere.
So verse 13, God says, I will dwell among the descendants of Israel, and I will not forsake my people Israel. So Solomon finished building the house. He paneled the inside walls of the building with cedar boards from the floor of the building to the rafters of the ceiling. He covered the inside walls with wood. He also covered the floor of the building with boards of fir wood. This is some of the best wood that's available. Strong, hardy, keeps its shape, all of the things that you
Cedar's
would
bug
expect.
resistant. Cedar's bug resistant.
Yes, oh yeah, very much so. Yeah. The cedars of Lebanon, they're very, very hardy wood, very, very strong and beautiful looking
Okay.
too. Verse 16, 30 feet from the back wall of the building, he built a wall of cedar boards from the floor to the ceiling. He built this wall inside the building to create an inner sanctuary, the most holy place. The front part of the building became a main room 60 feet long. Gourds and open flowers were carved into the cedar on the inside of the building. Everything was covered with cedar. No stone was visible. I don't know if you know it or not, but cedar has a beautiful smell to it.
Scent, yes.
Incense to it. You know, years ago, when it's probably quite beautiful, and now, but to own a cedar chest is a very valuable item
Yes.
to have in your house. You put your blankets and your linens in. But if they stored them in there, they bring them out to those directions.
I have one
Yeah, I have
from my mother.
my aunt.
Oh, you see, I had one that I called it my hopeless chest.
Okay.
It was supposed to be your hope chest.
Chest.
Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Put your things for your wedding, or whatever in there, and then
Yeah.
my dad said, no, it's a hopeless chest for you, Sue, but I'll buy you one. That was birthday 16.
Verse 19. He prepared the inner room of the sanctuary inside the building as a place to set the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. The inner sanctuary was 30 feet long, 30 feet wide, 30 feet high, and he overlaid it with pure gold.
Whoa.
Also overlaid the cedar altar with gold. So Solomon covered the inside of the building with pure gold. He stretched gold chains across the front of the inner sanctuary. He overlaid the sanctuary with gold. He overlaid the whole building with gold until the whole building had been covered. He also overlaid the whole altar, which was in front of the inner sanctuary, with gold. Wow. Anyone remember what the Ark of the Covenant was? The Ark,
Only Indiana Jones,
okay.
Ark of the Covenant.
The Ark of the Covenant.
Like, you know,
Manna and
just before.
10 Commandments. and
Ten Commandments was kept in the
Yeah,
Ark of the
something
Covenant.
else.
Yes,
It's like-
Now I remember it.
okay, there you go. Right, yeah, the 10 Commandments was kept in there. That was the covenant that God made. Keep my commandments. Only said, and keep my commandments. And they cover everything we need to know.
Oh, yeah.
And we need to probably review them at times to remind ourselves what they were. We do that in our worship service from time to time as we go through the catechism. So I always enjoy that, be reminded of what we were taught in our catechism instruction.
It's in our heads. We had to memorize it.
Yes, yes, oh yes, of course.
Get there.
Okay, the cherubim. Verse 23. For the inner sanctuary, he made 2 cherubim of olive wood. Each one was 15 feet tall. A cherubim is like a bird of sort, okay?
There was an angel. I thought it was a.
7.5 feet was the length of one wing of a cherub, and 7.5 feet was the length of the other wing of a cherub. The distance of the tip of one wing to the tip of the other was 15 feet. The other cherub also was 15 feet wide. Both of the cherubim were the same size and looked the same. One cherub was 15 feet tall, and so was the other cherub. He set the cherubim inside the inner sanctuary of the house. The wings of the cherubim were stretched out so that the outer wing of the first one touched the wall, and the outer wing of the other cherub touched the opposite wall, and their wings touched one another in the middle of the room. In other words, to whatever extent that was, there was some sort of connection. It was not a divided type of a thing, but from one end of the wall to the other wall, opposite end, it was joined together by the wings touching, so that it was continuity. It's not a this side, your side type of a thing.
Almost like a big hug.
No, I think of it as a divider. You know, dividing the space without building a wall.
Without building a wall. Yeah. Verse 29, he decorated the walls on all sides of both rooms of the building with carved figures of cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers. He overlaid the floor of the building with gold in both the inner and the outer rooms.
Was this a place where a person would walk into?
they were able to walk into it, although that was a sacred place, a very holy place.
Yeah.
It was not a place that was just
Open to
area.
the public.
yeah.
But I mean, I'm thinking of all this gold and, I mean, the cedar I can picture would be beautiful. Now it's covered with gold, which when I was in Peru, we were visiting some of these churches. I didn't care for a lot of it, but down in the basements was all these skeletons. I mean, we were walking right by and the smell in there. They should have told you to wear a mask or something. It was awful. But up above these, and I mean, the people there were so poor, so many poor people. But here was these beautiful saints dressed in just beautiful garb and gold everywhere. I thought they could take some of that gold and feed some of those poor people.
But here again, you see, we put a different value on gold because we think it is a expensive commodity.
Yeah.
That wasn't the meaning of gold to them. Gold was pure.
Oh,
Pure,
the
now,
purity of it.
purest of metals. Wasn't mixed with anything else. So here again, it wasn't expensive as we consider it.
Right, right.
It was pure. This is God.
Like white is pure.
Yeah, this is God.
Yeah.
That speaks to us from that standpoint. And so here again, our immediate thoughts go again to the value of it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that wasn't.
That's what I figured.
That wasn't Solomon's purpose. His purpose was
Just the-
to pureness.
Sure.
That
yes.
we have holy pure.
Thank you.
There in the chair.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hmm.
So here again, take a look at these things and hopefully see them in a different light. So that it reflects God on ours.
Yes.
The doors,
We're
verse 21, 30.
30 minutes. Yes, okay.
For the entrance to the inner sanctuary, he made olive wood doors with 5-sided frames. He served cherubim, palm tree, peacocker, cherubim, palm trees, and opened flowers on them and overlaid them with gold. He shaped sheets of hammered gold to cover the cherubim and the palm trees. Again, palm trees had a meaning.
Really? What would they mean?
What would they mean?
Palm
You
trees.
forgot my sermon on Palm Sunday 2 years ago.
I must.
Thanks, fell right into that, so I was. Palm trees, number one, are most important, as they're straight up and they reach high. So reaching into the heavens, look up.
Okay.
To see a palm tree and its beauty, you look up at it. It's not at eye level.
And they take the wind very well, don't they?
Yes,
That's why they're.
yeah.
You know what lives in them?
Robust.
Bugs.
They
Rats.
hold up
I said
I'm
bugs.
serious. I have one right across from my property. I never took it because of that.
Now looking at this pictures, thank you. I can see the inter sanctuary. Right.
Mhm.
So that's cool. But the detail, oh my gosh. The detail on it.
and open flowers, and I mean, they weren't real flowers, they were carved flowers.
They
What,
open.
what do we know about flowers that represent God or
Hmm.
anything?
I can think it was considered the lilies of the field, you know,
The
but that's
dogwood.
not quite what
A,
you're going
a
into.
pleasing odor,
Yeah.
Oh,
They
oh,
call
honey.
one of the phrases that we know.
Those things are
I'm
called-
familiar with them.
Yeah.
Okay, a pleasing odor. So it reminds us of something that's pleasing. It's not a sour
Mhm.
type of a thing.
My Bible says cherubim represents angels that guarded sacred objects and places. It's on your sheet.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, verse 36. He built the inner courtyard with 3 courses of cut stone and 1 course of cedar beams. The foundation of the Lord's house was laid in the 4th year in the month named Ziv. In the 11th year in the month named Joel, which is the 8th month. All the parts of the house were finished according to all of its specifications. Solomon had spent 7 years building it.
And that seems,
Ziv and ended. Ziv. He started in Ziv and ended in Ziv.
hmm,
So going on to page 13 now in our guides. It says, as God ordained, Solomon began to work on a dwelling place for God's name. David's old ally, King Hiram of Tyre, oversaw the felling and shipping of aromatic cedars from Lebanon, which Solomon traded for grain. Laborers spent 7 years building Solomon's temple. Just a comment in terms of this section that we've read, comes from the Bible here. It says specific dates such as 480 years after the Israelites came out of Egypt. 480 years after the Israelites came out of Egypt. Okay. They were 40 years in the wilderness. Plus they had taken over the Jordan, over the Jordan, the new land. So 400 years is a long time. Measurements, the 60 cubits long, and descriptions of cherubim olive wood led gravity to this description of the 7 years it takes to build the temple. With that care and dedication, Solomon builds. The Lord calls us to show equal concern for the house of worship in which we gather. It is, after all, a reflection of our devotion to the Lord, His word and His work. His dedication to us appeared in Solomon's descendant Jesus, whose body as a holy temple secured our salvation. So again, bringing it all together here, what does it mean for us? What does our sanctuary mean in terms of God's presence and how we treat it and how we look at it? And do we do those things that make it look right for it on that basis? And certainly the church want to develop items for the other windows.
I was thinking of that.
Yeah, so you know, this builds it all up from that standpoint.
Well, you see, I always had, for a long time, I had a hard time with the churches. And the people would just give their last penny, you know, and the churches just seemed like they were sucking them dry. and into these buildings and churches, and I couldn't see how God would be pleased with that, you know. But after we left Peru, that happened. I don't know how something happened anyway that brought that all out to light to me. And a lot of it was that gold and silver, that just wasn't a big deal, you know. I mean, that was there, it was free on the land, all you had to do was get it and use it. So it did finally come to me that you know, we need to have a beautiful place, and we shouldn't be
Cutting corners.
yes, so cheap, you know. You think God didn't, Jesus died on that cross, you know, that wasn't a cheap thing. So anyways,
And that's where we have to keep in mind, you know, how does one, can we worship in a fellowship hall? Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely, you know. But do we recognize it even then as a worship facility, and do we treat it as a worship facility where God resides in? And so that becomes that difference. Or is it just another building? Is it just another room?
No.
God's presence. How do we reflect that in terms of our worship, in terms of the things that we do within that worship setting, that worship house, whatever it might be? You know, many of our churches today, well, there's not too many today that are built as mission churches, but the mission churches, when our synod started putting out missions all over, they picked up a storefront. They any type of a building that was available. This was where you started a church. Many of the churches here in Flint from missions that were started
Faith in Grand Blanc was started at the movie theater.
at the movie theater.
Pilgrim was started at Atherton High School.
Have all of those things.
Peace was started, wasn't it? Was some kind of a warehouse type thing, or some kind of another building that before that was built.
I wonder where Redeemer started out.
There was I was in the old church. There was 3 churches. One that was before my time was wood. Redeemer's like here, and there's a gas station there. That was a white wood that I seen pictures of. But then they tore that down, and it was a gold, yellow kind of brick. That's what I grew up in. Then around, we got married in '59, and or my brother got married in '59. He was the second couple to get married in Redeemer. So in '50s is when the one that's there now it was built in the '50s, late
Then-
'50s.
Redeemer and Peace combined.
Yeah, and they should have. They're so close. They're only
Right.
blocks away.
Yeah.
So,
I love the cross with the risen Christ and how it's lit up.
but that was
Isn't
made
it
by a
beautiful?
German in Frankenmuth.
I believe it.
Yeah, that's why we kept it. I mean, it was, and that was broken one time.
But it's
Yeah.
fixed.
One time,
Christ was broken for us too.
no, but I mean, in the, it was a holiday weekend, like Labor Day or whatever, and when they came in, it had fallen. If anybody would have been under it, they killed him. And it took his hand off, I think, and his foot. But the guy from Frankenmuth had to come and make a new,
Fix him up.
and now you notice it's up there really secure. Because it came down on the altar.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, yeah, it did.
Going on to number 14 in our page. The labor needed to build a temple involved 30,000 men plus 70,000 burden bearers, 80,000 stone cutters, 3,300 chief officers. Verse 13 mentions that Solomon drafted forced labor. Why might forced labor be a concern for any king after Solomon?
Forced labor, wouldn't that be slaves?
No unions there.
No.
It wasn't volunteer work. It wasn't volunteer work.
I wonder if they paid him, or
That's
maybe
how
just
they,
met him.
they got, yeah, that's how they got that. Yeah.
And that wasn't any better than what the Egyptians did when they had the. What
The pyramids and all that they built.
right, they built all that with slave labor. And they got
There's some dead bodies in there.
maybe, maybe somewhere they. Oh crap, I lost my trail of thought.
My commentary says in regards to forced labor that Solomon conscripted men into the workforce to build a temple. He forced them to work. They did not volunteer. The temple project took 7 years to complete. Solomon's palace took 13 years, as we'll discover in lesson 3. Solomon also used forced labor to rebuild cities and build cities for his chariots, sites for his horsemen, and other structures. Forced labor bred resentment toward King Solomon. This resentment boiled over and split Solomon's kingdom at his death.
Well, it sounds like
To
he
read,
took it further than just building the temple and started using slaves for his own. And
taking
what
concubines.
made him no better than his father, just in a different way.
And that's one of the things I think that we have to keep in mind. At what point does something that seems good become bad?
Yeah. Right, when you start taking advantage.
Something that seems good becomes bad. At what point does it overdo the function?
Well, that's kind of like giving and then wanting to be recognized.
Want someone to do. Them to
Then
do
you
something
really
for you.
didn't do it out of the kindness of your heart. You did it because.
Another thought that came to me, when thinking about forced labor. What does that do in terms of relationships? That do, thinking about it. Mom says, "You will do the dishes tonight." Forced labor?
Yeah,
Mm,
What does that do?
Causes problems, you know.
It's problems, doesn't it? Yeah.
good, yes,
Yeah.
definitely,
If not for a long time, for at least a short time anyway,
yes.
it always costs. So sooner or later, yeah, it's not the way to get the job done.
My mother was a neatnik. I mean, she was,
Pick up.
yeah. And we were under forced labor too. And, but we didn't get beat or anything, but, my friends would come over when we were in junior high and high school and or they'd have to walk on that runner, you don't want to get off on the carpet, One of my girlfriends put her pocketbook on mother's Duncan 5 table and mother. But oh, jeez, I forgot what I was gonna say.
I want to put plastic over the couch.
Yeah. then what the hell
That's
did
all
I
we
say?
put plastic over the
Everybody,
couch.
I got one for her when she passed. The original furniture that was in her living room covered in that thick plastic.
Yeah, well, they didn't buy
One
furniture.
of us sat on it and it just like, you could hear it and it like crumbled into pieces.
Oh, gosh.
But back in those days, people didn't buy furniture every few years or whatever. You bought it, that was lifetime. Gonna keep that.
Lifetime purchase.
Yeah, because they didn't have the money.
I know what I was gonna say. So my girlfriends would come over. And we would go up and have to turn the bed spread down to sit on the bed. And then I'd have to put it back.
Yeah,
But my girlfriends later told me, we always thought, because they came over, we had a reunion. And there was quite a few of them that came over and they went in the house and they said, we always thought that you would be a real slob when you grew up. because, you know, the way your mother made you keep everything clean.
Oh.
I said, no, that didn't happen.
So get your pocketbook off the table. You can-
Oh, shoot.
Well, I'm paying my mom back now. She has to do the dishes.
Oh, good. You know, isn't it funny when you get to do the old payback?
Yeah. We have 2 dishes.
All 2 dishes.
Number 50. As Solomon's labors erected the temple, if you remember, we read, God came to Solomon. How did God's covenant blessing of Israel relate to the faithfulness of her kings? God's covenant blessing.
That's too funny.
Remember, God said, if you will follow my commands, if you do what is written, you will be blessed.
It would turn into something primitive, but not the holy place that once was.
So God here is immediately now changing or at least preparing them that it is not the place, it is what it represents. It represents me. And I'm telling you this. Follow my commandments. Do as I have said to do. The commentary for this it's interesting. It says we can imagine the scene. Workers clamoring about the temple like bees around a hive. And God, in the midst of all this, comes to Solomon with a reminder. God looked at Solomon's heart, not his work, to build God a home. God promised that if Solomon would respond to God's rich blessings by living a life pleasing to God, that is, walk in his statutes, obey his rules and commandments, God would dwell among his people. Some today believe that they can live as they please apart from God and his word and still expect his blessings. What a misunderstanding. So here again, it would have been very easy, and maybe it was for some of those people there, that as they built this temple, it became a place of worship. I built this, I have built this, look what I did. God is saying it doesn't have anything to do with that. It has to do with what I want. Follow my commands. I will make you a great people. All my commandments. And I will give forgiveness of their sins. Keep the focus where it needs to be. Don't let the building sound the Almighty.
Mm-hmm.
It represents the Almighty. It brings us peace, forgiveness, salvation, eternal life. A different way to look at a building, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. You know, when I was in Utah, they were having I was with a group, volleyball group, and a bunch of them was gonna go visit the temple. And I didn't go. I have to admit, I've been real curious seeing it. But there's just something about the Mormon
I
temple.
would like to see it though.
I didn't want to go in it.
Unless it
Just
had evil in it or was not. Yeah,
because they built it with stone. I mean, those buildings are built with marble or something. I mean, they're really to glorify God, just not the same God
but the one mission,
that I believe.
the one mission league that we went on, we were supposed to go to Utah, Salt Lake City. That was our destination that year. And they know like 4 or 5 years ahead of time that that's how far ahead we asked them.
Planet, yeah.
The year of the mission league, Salt Lake City turned us down. They did not want us there. And so we had to go to Albuquerque, and they had to do that really fast to get a place in Albuquerque, but I don't know why they turned us down. Did they not want a bunch of Lutheran women? Who drink, they don't drink coffee or any of that kind of stuff, that would probably go against what they believed, I don't know, but we were turned down the
Why
last,
didn't you ask them?
huh?
Why did you ask them? Why?
Well, I'm not on the committees or anything. But it was strange that they knew for years that we were coming. And try to put on a convention for 1,000 people
Yeah.
with hotels and convention centers. That's
That's a big undertaking.
Yes, it
I
is.
I was at 4 of those.
that's like kind of like the Olympics, you gotta know way ahead of time what you're doing, and we were so excited, we wanted to go to Salt Lake City. Well, but they said no.
All right, well, let's go into chapter 7 of First Kings.
Oh, okay.
Chapter 7. Now we see another building being built. Okay?
Just a minute.
Yes.
Whatever happened? What happened to this temple that was built? Solomon's.
Tune in later.
Okay.
What?
The Solomon's temple.
Oh, well, it went bye-bye.
Okay, well,
Babylonians,
I knew that, but we weren't.
Babylonians.
Spoiler alert.
Yes. Let's go. Okay. Okay.
Okay. First Kings chapter 7. Starting at verse 1. It took Solomon 13 years to finish building his whole palace complex. Okay, 13 years to finish his building, his palace.
It's now become
The house of the forest of Lebanon. He built the house of the forest of Lebanon. It was 150 feet long, 75 feet wide, 45 feet high. It had 4 rows of cedar pillars with cedar beams on top of the pillars. It was roofed with cedar above the 45 beams that rested on the pillars, 15 beams in each row. There were 3 rows of windows with recessed frames on each side of the building. All the doors and posts were made with square beams. They were arranged in groups of 3. He built a pillared entry hall, known as the Hall of Pillars. It was 75 feet wide, 45 feet deep. There was another porch in front of the pillars and more pillars and a canopy in front of them. Then he built the Hall of Justice. He made another hall named the Hall of Justice. The throne from which he judged cases was located there. The hall was covered with cedar from floor to ceiling. And we'll stop. No, go a little bit further now. His house in which he lived was made the same way. It was on the other side of a courtyard behind the Hall of Pillars. Solomon also made another house like this hall for Pharaoh's daughter, whom he had married. All of these were made of high-quality stone, precisely cut to the exact measure, trimmed with saws on both sides. Such stones were used from the foundation of the edge of the roof, from the outside of the complex to the great courtyard on the inside. The foundation was made of high-quality stones, huge stones, 12 or 17 foot long. Well, this were high-quality stones, precisely cut with layers of cedar wood in between. The great courtyard all the way around had 3 courses of cut stone and then a course of cedar beams like the inner courtyard of the house of the Lord and the porch of that building. So by description, what does this palace look like? Mammoth. 4 different houses, different areas. Says on our page 13 there under Solomon's Palace, although laborers finished the temple, the work continued for an additional 13 years. No, nearly twice the time spent building the temple. Solomon built an elaborate palace nearby consisting of 4 buildings. The 4 buildings covered a space larger than the temple. There's the names of the 4 buildings Solomon erected as part of his palace. Well, we just went over that. House of the Forest, Hall of the Forest, the Hall of Pillars, the Hall of Thrones, the Hall of Judgment.
I don't remember that.
Okay,
Solomon's downfall starts about here, mirroring out of his spiritual, the Israelites, he takes Pharaoh's daughter.
yes, right.
Big mistake.
Big.
One out of how many?
Yeah. Even the best of us make mistakes.
Mhm.
Yep.
Even the best of us make mistakes. And so his mistakes are accountable for and listed there to know. And it's something that we do need to know. What do we note though about these buildings? And what strikes you about them?
They were magnificent,
Yeah, they were
huge.
special, they were holy. That's what I would,
And plus, like, you know, the stones and all of that, just should, like, money with no object going again, so they don't burn.
Mhm.
So you can see that with the temple, but then also with his,
Think he was mimicking.
These were all buildings that were built to serve himself. These were all things that was built to serve himself. This is my place. It's interesting how very quickly we take a look at things. And my place. We do this here, but at your place, we do something different, say.
He used a lot of materials that he used at the other
Yes.
place.
Yes.
You know,
This is a tendency that we have to take a look at ourselves, and it calls for us. The Lord calls for us to take a look at what we're doing. Why are we doing what we're doing? Is it really that important that they do something that pleases me, or that I do something that pleases somebody else? That's not to take away from providing, but God says, I will provide for you. If you honor me, if you give glory to me, if you give praise to me, I'll take care of you. You won't have to worry about those things and what people think of you, think of me. I'll take care of that for us. He'll provide. Solomon got kind of carried away a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. Okay. And that's where I think is just kind of a warning shot for each one of us to
yes,
think about.
Well,
Each one of them.
when you have a lot, you expect to get more. You know, when you buy your first home, you want your second home to be
Bigger than the first.
bigger and better, and your car, I keep moving up in cars. I'm poor Earl. Have poor Earl.
that seems.
But I think as I've gotten older, I look I look different.
You look what? I couldn't hear what the door.
I look different. Look different at what I want.
You want something that's substantial that will.
Yeah, I'm not trying to get it's. I don't know.
So the young people today, they want something big and better right away.
Instantly, yes, yes. They
It's
don't
a
get the
shame.
idea of working. Yeah, our first house is $25,000.
I'd like to share a story with you, a little life story with you, a little close story. Okay.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little louder, please?
sure
With the
can.
machine running?
Yeah,
I'd appreciate it.
all righty, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. I had the opportunity to become part of a spiritual seminar called Via de Cristo Cursillo. Any of you heard of it?
Lois has been on one of those. Yeah,
Right.
but just whatever. Yeah,
It
they
was
went
back
on
in
weekends.
late eighties. Came part of that group. It's a non-denominational Christian seminar. 4 day weekend. It's spent with basically lay people, Christians, pastors there to kind of oversee, but nothing that they do is substantial to the effort. It's all lay. This was in Midland, Dow Chemical. This was in this case, the men go at one weekend, the women go at another weekend. You don't go as a couple. Go as like sex. The weekend was spent learning about Christ in a different way, in a new way completely, and how to live that faith. I went there, having been a Christian all my life. In fact, I turned down the offer several times, and I decided to go because I had a lot of friends that were part of it. They just said, "You got to go, you got to go." And I went and I experienced something that I had never experienced before in my life as a Christian. To understand God's work. One of the things of many, I haven't spent time with all of them, one of the things that impressed me the most was that there was at least 8 people from Dow Chemical employees. Dow Chemical plays very good. These were leadership people in the company. And as they talked about their experience after going through this weekend, they shared with us. And they said that after they went back to work, went back to their house, and looked at their house, they said, "You know what? I don't need this. I need something small." I never heard anyone ever say,
Yeah, that's
"I
nice.
need something small." These men had been so affected by their faith and what God can do that they knew that by having this mansion, so to speak, this big home, which matched all of the other personalities of the Dow Chemical, it was out of context to what God would have them do and what they could do for God. And so by going smaller, by going into a smaller home, a nice home, but not a mansion, they were more able to serve their Lord with that funds as opposed to serving themselves. That was impressive to me.
Boy, yes,
That was impressive.
there.
I never heard that.
I don't think I've done that.
I was at that time 45 years old, and nobody ever moves down.
Now.
You always move a step up, do
Mhm.
whatever. But these men, professional men, with their families, say, "No, we need to step down."
They saw it. They saw they
Yeah.
saw the whole building.
It was,
Oh, that's beautiful.
you know, and when I read yours and think, our general idea is to move forward and get more. Here was a truth. Said it's time. So to the fellow workers and all, yeah, we're moving. We're gonna move down into the neighborhood now instead of on the other street.
It's beautiful. That's beautiful thought for the day.
It happens.
Yeah.
It can be done.
Yes.
And I did not take any joy or take anything out of them. Make them sad because, oh boy, we don't have the big room or the kids don't have all of this and that. There was more joy than they ever experienced as a man.
Did he say what he did with the money then?
Yes, most of it was given back to the Lord. But they were
You give them to help them.
they were serving the Lord, doing things that would provide. And they ended up being workers on the program as well, to be part of that, giving their time, which I also did.
It's great.
Let's close with prayer. Lord God, we thank you for this time together. We thank you, Lord, that your Holy Spirit to give us guidance and direct us. And just to awaken our thoughts and ideas of how we live our lives, Lord, and where we put our thought and our money and our importance, Lord. You have said that you are a loving and caring God. You will take care of us. And you have done that, and you continue to do that. And we thank you for that, Lord. May we show that our thanks and our praise to you by serving you and by giving you the honor and the glory that is due. We ask this in the name of our Savior, Jesus, who taught us to pray.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Give
Let us stand and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you very much.